if we wanted to pay attention to things that are in the public record, we would know that. And if we cared about other people as much as we should care about other people, as if they were our brothers and sisters, we wouldn't have allowed this shit to happen. But we have. And now we are confronting a situation in which everything that we become used to, the kind of comfort level that we're used to. I had somebody say the other night, you're making me really uncomfortable. Good. If you came here to be comfortable, then I hope to disappoint you. I think comfort is part of our problem. The more comfortable we are, it's amazing how directly proportionate comfort is to stupidity or willful ignorance. Some of the dumbest people on the planet are Harvard, Oxford, Cambridge, Stanford graduates, willfully ignorant because they know enough to know that if they speak the truth about a number of subjects, it ain't good for their career. So they remain willfully ignorant, although they're completely capable of understanding these things. And in the circles that they are in, which are essential really, like academia, shouldn't we, this fucking place up here, for Christ's sake, should be a hotbed of serious debate, and real conversations about real issues without censorship and whatnot. And I mean, that place is just pretty much completely controlled, is it not? I mean, there is some free thinking going on, but it's in the external areas. It's not like rewarded. It should be rewarded in a university like that. There should be students in that university who are coming here as part of critical thinking and philosophy and whatnot, challenging their views with professors who see, yeah, that's a great opportunity. We've got it. That's not happening. It's not happening because it's all about programming and academia and politics and corporate life and banking and the whole lot, all of it controlled. And we, as a population, as the people of the West, we're actually being sacrificed right now. You see what's going on in Europe. This is all engineered. This refugee thing, which is legitimate, of course. You've got people who are fleeing a horrendous environment. Nobody in their right mind would stay in a place like Syria or Libya or Iraq or any of these places that we've devastated. Would you stay there, out of principle? For Christ's sake, especially if you had children. What are you going to do? You're going to get the hell out of there. But all of this is engineered. And of course, they're engineering this wave of refugees into Europe. And, so it's like you have to take one of two positions, the liberal, lefty, humanitarian view of let's take them all in and, that's the only way. And then the right wing, which is blaming and scapegoating the immigrants and the Muslims and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, is there no other place for us to really occupy? Do we have to choose these controlled paradigms? Do we have to choose these things? It's like the Democrat-Republican. I mean, are you kidding me? Why is that con still going? Why does anybody in their right mind seriously believe that any of the candidates on the left or the right that have an actual chance of becoming president, that they're actually going to do something of any significance? And I know I must be offending quite a few people in this room, but I cannot believe that anybody in their right mind seriously thinks that any of those that actually have a chance of winning, if you're talking about somebody obscure who's not got a chance in hell of getting in, yeah, I don't doubt there's integrity and honor within those spaces, but they're not going to be there. And these assholes that they're propping up in front of us, whether they be Democrat or Republican, it doesn't matter. And the latest one is so obvious with Obama. Like, why are people waiting for a savior on a white horse? This is ridiculous. It's mind control. The irony of the life that we're living is that while we attribute so much power to the powers that be, at least those of us who have any clue whatsoever, the fact is that they have no power but that which we've given them. Literally, they have nothing. An example of that, a recent example of that, is Syria, just a few years back. You may recall in 2013, it was like Iraq 2.0. I mean, it was just, oh my God, are you kidding me, man? They're rehashing the same shit. Okay, here we go. We've got this really violated population in Syria. They've got this brutal dictator, and oh my God, it just pains us so much, these poor Syrian people. Boy, oh boy, do we have to help them. And this man, this crazy man who's just oppressing all these Syrian people, he's got chemical weapons, and boy, oh boy, that's just really the line that has to be drawn, the red line as it were, and we're just going to have to help this population if it comes down to the use of chemical weapons. It was so ridiculously transparent from the very beginning, and nobody in their right mind would believe it. And the funny thing is, as much as most of you, I bet, will have adopted the view that nobody cares, or there's so many, nobody, the masses, they're so preoccupied with bullshit and whatnot. The fact is that in 2013, with all the same kind of propaganda, all the psychological tactics and manipulations and techniques that got a reasonable amount of people to buy into the need to invade Iraq, they were using all the same techniques with Syria. And you know what? Basically, nobody bought it. Nobody bought it. This is really more important than people realize. There was no major protests. Let's go back to 2003, the biggest protest in the history of the world. The thing is that while we had these very large protests, there was still a considerable amount of the population that bought the bullshit. What that number was, well, that's debatable. It might have been 30, 40, 50, maybe even 60 or 70. Who knows what it truly was. All the polls and everything said it was sort of 50-50 kind of thing, but I don't really know, to be honest. But they had enough. They had enough. They had enough of us that bought into it to some degree, and that's all they need. But with Syria in 2013, with all the same techniques, all the same motivation, all the same bullshit, nobody bought it. The polls, the official polls here, said there was about 9% approval with all of that. In this country, as dumb and brainwashed and manipulated as this population might be, basically nobody bought it. And the same thing held true in Europe and England. Same thing. Same thing. And if you're observing like I'm observing, seeing it's clear what their agenda is, Syria was always a stepping stone to Iran. Always a stepping stone to Iran. Once we get Syria, bam, now we can head to Iran. And these bastards have been attempting this for many years. I mean, post 9/11, there was a huge investment in vilifying Iran and attempting to justify some sort of attack on Iran, a provocation with Iran. Huge amounts of effort put into this, and it didn't happen. And they put massive effort into it in 2013, and they even carried out a false flag. Our guys carried out a false flag again. We killed about 1,000 people. We killed about 1,000 because these bastards work for us. I don't care what, we may use proxies and intermediaries to funnel money, but the explosives and all of the wherewithal, the protection from the media, the political cover, all that bullshit comes from us. And these motherfuckers went there and they used chemical weapons in Ghouta and killed about 1,000 people. Women and children. And even with that, nobody bought it. It's kind of funny, the backstory of that, by the way, if you don't know, because Bashar al-Assad could see this coming too. He's not a stupid man. I mean, whatever you want to say about the guy, he's not stupid. He's English university degreed optometrist. He actually was probably a reluctant inheritor of the power. It wasn't supposed to be him. It was supposed to be his brother. By all accounts, I believe that story. I don't think he was somebody who craved this power, but it was put upon him, and he has done a job which in that region, if we're to be fair about what it takes to be a leader in that region, it was done about as honorably as you could possibly do it. You couldn't do it as a nice guy who respects everyone's human rights and due process of law, and I'm not making excuses, but the bottom line is, if you're like Mr. Nice Guy and lets everyone do what they want to do and don't have serious surveillance of the population and find out the problems, the infiltrators from the enemy, who will use every means to get inside and totally destroy you from the inside, you're not going to last. And that's why guys like Saddam Hussein can be our best friend and ally one day, because they'll do whatever the hell it takes. And then tomorrow, they're incarnation of they're the Antichrist when it's no longer favorable. Bashar al-Assad saw what was coming and was inviting UN inspectors in for about 6 months. He was trying to get, come on in, you're apparently concerned about me using chemical weapons. Come on in, collect the evidence, and make a report. And he had been inviting them for about 6 months, and they finally got there. When they got there? I mean, you could hardly make this up. Yeah, 2 days before he apparently launched a chemical attack, Within 10 miles of where the inspectors he'd just been inviting for 6 months, they arrive and he decides to go ahead and launch a chemical attack in Ghouta, 10 miles away from where the inspectors were. I mean, you could hardly make this shit up. It's a bad B movie. Arnold Schwarzenegger and Bruce Willis and Sylvester Stallone surely are going to jump out any moment and save the fucking day. It's an alternate reality. And nobody bought it. So the point I'm actually making here is that contrary to what you've been programmed to believe, many of you at least, we have the power. And I tell you what they need from us: complicity. That's what they need from us. And as long as we're complicit, they can do whatever the hell it is they want. But they have to con us into that. It's like the vampire. The vampire cannot come into your home unless you invite him. So the vampire will try and trick you, because once he gets in your home, you're screwed. But he cannot come into your home unless you invite him in. So how do we invite the vampire into our world, into our existence, into our reality? With our complicity. When we withhold that complicity, they have nothing at all. Nothing. And Syria is such a stark example. But you know what their response to that was? And you have to give them credit, I have to say. You have to give the motherfuckers credit, man. I tell you, they come up with some good shit. They created ISIS. Well, that's pretty good, man. Pretty good. Rehash, rebrand that whole Al-Qaeda thing. And that's all it is. It's a rebranding of the same bullshit. And it's so transparent and obvious. And in the immediate, they got quite a bit of traction. They have. But I think ISIS, Israeli Secret Intelligence Service, I think ISIS is the same thing as 9/11. In the immediate, there was amazing success. Everything they had planned out, the goal of full spectrum dominance, permanent military bases in the region of the Middle East, securing Afghanistan. I mean, none of it went perfectly to plan, but all of the objectives that they were seeking from this new Pearl Harbor event, laid out in the Project for a New American Centuries document, Rebuilding America's Defenses, also another one, A Clean Break. All of the shit that they had written about, which it seems as if they have a policy of revealing everything they intend to do, but unfortunately there's such a minority of us following this stuff that they seem to have provided us with notice. Here's what we're going to do. Does anybody have an objection? Nobody. Okay, excellent. So we shall go ahead and carry out an agenda of full spectrum dominance and start invading people and wars of aggression and killing people in mass and torture and all that shit. But we said we were going to do it, didn't we? But nobody objected. And that's what they got from 9/11. They actually achieved the goals. For the most part, they achieved everything they were looking for. And the same thing with ISIS. But on the back end is something really remarkable. In 2001, how many people knew what a false flag was? Think about it. How many people knew what a false flag was? This is a tactic they've used throughout history for millennia. It's not just recent. I mean, it's something that's been used for millennia. And it's very effective. In fact, it is the most effective tactic for manipulating people into war. And you have to understand, if you're trying to understand the world, one thing you have to do is, if you are even halfway sane a human being, you need to get out of that perspective, okay? Just remove yourself from any kind of sanity or humanity. Like, get out of that space. The space you need to get into is the space of a psychopath and a sociopath. No empathy whatsoever, completely drunk on power, willing to do anything and everything to elevate yourself and your position of power. That is the kind of mental space you need to get into if you want to understand the way things work.